It is the 28th of January, 2021, and we are talking about Barrett Art Center's Photowork 2021 exhibition. My name is Joanna Frang. I'm the executive director at the Barrett Art Center, and I've got 3 artists here who have been selected from over 800 submissions. Their artwork was selected by Audrey Sands of the Phoenix Museum of Art and the Center for Creative Photography. And they're going to speak tonight about their work in particular, or their practice, or just answer questions from anyone who's out there watching right now. And I certainly have a few. It's a wonderful exhibition. And I invite people to come see it at the Barrett Art Center in Poughkeepsie, New York, or to visit us virtually online at barrettartcenter.org. And today we are going to start with someone local. We have people from both coasts here tonight, from Connecticut to California, but we'll start with someone from New York. So we'll start with photographer Michael DiPleco, who's joining us from Riften, New York, and here to talk about his work from the Trailer Trash series. So I give you Michael.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michael DiPleco. I'm a photographer. I've been a photographer for quite a while, probably 45 years now. A little bit about me. I sold my first photograph when I was 12 years old. My grandfather and my father were returning from a fishing trip, and we saw a building burning. And I took my grandfather's camera and took a picture, and they published it in the Poughkeepsie Journal. And I'm very pleased to have been accepted into this show. This is my second time being part of Photowork. I think I'll share my screen now, and we'll show you some of the stuff. There it is. Okay. This image you're looking at here was from the Photoworks 10, which was 11 years ago. And it's a photo of a butcher in Battagna, Italy. And I leaned my head out the window, and there he was, just standing there staring off. And I said, go get the camera and take a shot down at him. And it worked out really quite nicely. Now, this is the shot that's in the show this year. A little bit about this image. It's on a little trailer in High Falls, New York, and there was a lady who lived in this trailer for many years and then became too elderly to care for herself, went into a nursing home, and then the trailer fell into disrepair. What attracted to me to this image was that the flag in the window, and I included it in the show because I liked how the flag was tilting down, which is more of a symbol that there's distress. And after what we've had for 2020, it sort of fits a little bit better with the tone of what the world was like. Trailer Trash started about, I would say about 12 years ago. And I'm a motorsport photographer now. And I was covering a rally out in Sullivan County, and crossing between stages, we bumped into this trailer, which was probably originally a horse trailer, but we really don't know because there's a bathroom in it. So it suggested that it was used by humans. So we bumped into the owner of the land, and he wanted to know why we were on the property. So that's how the project started. And then it grew out of control. These are very local around my house. This one was a very interesting trailer up in Bovina, New York. My wife and I, Tess, went to dinner. And on the way there, she was in the passenger seat, and she spotted this off to our driver's right. And so we turned around and went back to it. This is the first shot that presented itself when I walked through the door. And the trailer was covered with graffiti. It was used by, I would imagine, young people. All the windows were smashed, but someone had constructed a stove, a wood-burning stove, out of the wheels from an automobile. And it was very clever. And I really enjoyed being in that trailer. This guy is in, I believe this was Kerhonkson, somewhere in Kerhonkson. But when we approached this trailer, we approached from the other side, and it was just a cedar shingle on top of the metal, and it looked very intact. As we walked around to this side, it was really falling in and decrepit. And the main door was still working, and you could look in, and there was a television still sitting on the stand. But what attracted me to this shot was because the luggage, you know, his clothing is still in the closet, and he has all this mail and stuff in the closet, which is exposed to the environment, this little lamp. And another thing that really is kind of like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know what the word would be, kismet maybe. But if you look at the bag, it says James Way Department Stores. When I was a product guy in New York City, one of our clients was James Way Department Stores. And I've always found that, and I always like this little Indian here. But this is where it got a little weird, because we found this trailer and it had a piano in it. And I didn't touch it. I wanted to play, you know, see if it worked, but I didn't want to touch it. So I just took a picture of it. It looks smaller than it really is, but it was very, I don't know. It looked lonesome in this derelict, you know. And now we jump back in time. This is what I used to do. This was a project called with SX70s Polaroids. And at the time you could push around the emulsion and create different things. Polaroid changed the emulsion so you can see a lot heavier white lines coming through. That's the base layer. And then they discontinued the whole product line in the future. Now, can anybody tell me who this fella is?
No.
Joanna? No? That's Frank Stella.
Oh, wow.
And okay, Frank is a very, he's into cars. And here he is helping this group from the Bronx. They're an artist group from the Bronx, and we're up at the Monticello motor course, and for the Art in Motion. And Frank was there because he's a member of the club. And these guys were creating this art car, and they got Frank to come over and paint the car with them. If you're familiar, Frank Stella in 1976 was the first American painter to paint one of the art cars, which was a BMW CSL. If you remember, Andy Warhol and Lichtenstein and numerous other artists were invited to paint these cars. But the first car was by this guy, Frank Stella. And I got to meet him, and I spent about a half an hour talking with him. He is a wonderful man. And one day I'd like to get out to see his studio. This young lady was shot in Puglia, Italy. And there's a series that I've been working on of people doing work. And she has a broom in her hands, which is made out of the brush that grows wild in the southern part of Italy. And she uses it to sweep away underneath the olive trees. And then later on, they'll come in and collect the olives. But we didn't understand each other because I speak no Italian. But we got the idea across. I'm a big fan of the Kingston Artist Soapbox Derby. I've been participating in it for probably the past 18 years. I've only lived up here in Riften now for 7 years. But this is my domestic felon car. This was the year Martha Stewart went to jail. And it's made out of a ironing board. And the steering wheel was a door off a washer machine. And of course, I shaved my mustache off that I had at the time to make myself look a little more like a female going to prison. So this is my fun project. These are the boys. I've had these aliens since way back in the early 80s. They've been to something like 12 different countries, maybe more. Here they are up in Lake Louise in British Columbia. And they've been everywhere. They've been to Italy and London and Mexico and quite a few places. They've been very lucky. I have a thing for Calder, just to show you where my background comes from. This is down at Storm King. This is the Arch. Wherever we travel, I try to find out if there's any Calder sculptures in the area within 100 miles, and then we go look at them. And then it brings me, the last part of this is what I do today. I shoot motorsports instead of products now. And since we had an American flag theme at the show for a few shots, I thought this one would be appropriate. This is a race car from its inception. It belongs to an editor of Road and Track called Tom Cotter, who is also known as the Barn Finder, something like that. But I was the first guy to ever be able to shoot on this gentleman's property up by Lime Rock. So that is what I do, and I love what I do. I will always be a photographer. I always have a camera in my hand. Sometimes it's just an iPhone, but I enjoy it so much. That's it. I can't hear you, Joanna.
Wow. Thank you, Michael. I am struck by how this kind of mixture of melancholy and humor that's going on, and just listening to you speak, I want to go on a road trip with you. But so I'm kind of thinking about kind of movement of, you know, the car and the trailer, which implies this movement and freedom, and the way you've got these American flags in different shots. And I just wonder if you think I'm guessing you've traveled maybe around the world with in taking photos all over of motorsports, and I know that you've been for yourself to Italy and different places. And I wonder if there's an association with this kind of mobility and transportation that has any resonance specifically in the US with cars and American freedom, or America, it's just, these things just kind of seem to be talking to each other.
I've never even feed into that. I don't know where it comes from. I thought about someone asking me something like that, and I would say, I shoot what I like.
Okay.
I also like shooting on the street. When I go down to New York City, still I carry a camera with me and I shoot from my waist, and but it really is what I like. I like automobiles, always have. That just turned into a profession because the product business, it's still there. I just don't want to do it anymore.
Fair enough. So as you're kind of looking around and seeing any similarities between what you photograph professionally, and do you see any correlations between the lines and design? Is there something in how you trained, or is it all still what you had in your mind's eye at age 12?
At age 12, I didn't know I wanted to be a photographer. But where I switched was when I was in college. I was going into broadcast, and I was writing for newspapers, so that's where it was. But I can see where you're going with the correlation between transportation and mostly trailers being able to be pulled, and I can see that. And I never thought about that before. I've never, like I said, devied into where my motivation for this stuff comes. But I like traveling around and hunting these things down, because my wife Tess and I, we get in the car and we go for drives, and people call me up and say, hey, you got to come up here and look at this one. The next time you're in Atlanta, I got something for you. This is how I find them. And a lot of people are interested in this, and they don't understand the fascination that I have with the idea of trailers and the trash that supposedly lived in them, or are they just trashed? And that's what I really sort of.
Again, what a better way to plan one's travel is to let everyone know this is the thing that you're interested in, and then people just write your itinerary for you. I kind of like that way of planning my next vacation.
I have 2 waiting for me out in Dallas, outside of Dallas.
Well, everybody just needs to get vaccinated, and then we'll look for those photos from you.
Tomorrow.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
Congratulations. So thank you so much, Michael. From one coast to the other, we're going to head out to California, where we're going to speak with our artist photographer, Tim Durant, who's going to speak about his work, The Natural, and has a wonderful slideshow to share with us. So welcome, Tim.
Hi everybody. Yeah, let me see if I can get that started. How does that look?
Great.
Filling the screen, okay. Well, it's interesting to, Michael, you said that you sold your first photograph aged 11, I think you said. I was comparatively a late bloomer with that. I think I sold my first photograph aged 18, maybe. I grew up in the northeast of England, which, although, I mean, pretty run down in some places, beautiful in others, but it had a pretty vibrant music scene. And so I somehow managed to be taking pictures of various, bands that passed through town, got myself some press passes and kind of snuck into shows. And I would take photographs of the bands and then develop them myself, print them myself, and then bring a stack of them to the next show, and then try and sell them to people outside, other kind of music fans. And I think I sold them for maybe £3 each. Just, I'd sell 10 and that would, pay for a night out. So that's how I got started in photography, was selling quick photos for £3 a time. This photo is actually the opposite end of that spectrum of my life. This was here in California. This was 2015. And it's a very meaningful photograph for me because it is my naturalization ceremony here in Los Angeles. There were big signs everywhere saying no photography allowed. So I waited, and as we all got kicked out, I kind of, I don't know, tied my shoelace or something like that and hung around for just an extra few seconds so that I could just snap a quick iPhone photograph. And this was 5 years ago, so iPhone, who knows what, but just managed to snap that on my way out before all of us new Americans got kicked out. I was let in, got the photograph, kicked out, let in as a Brit and let out as an American. So I like the photograph because it's very meaningful to me, but at the same time, there is something kind of blank about it, with all of the empty chairs and, the flag there, very meaningful, but at the same time, kind of empty a little bit in that empty room. And I think that's a theme I've tried to explore. So I've kind of cast back through a few other photographs that I think follow the same kind of theme. I took this in Saudi Arabia back in 2014, and I was working on a construction site, part of which I think you can see in the background there. Huge empty stretch of desert outside of Jeddah. And I just thought it's so interesting that the complex hadn't yet been built. It was in the middle of nowhere, respectfully. And it was a billboard advertising nothing. But somebody had gone to all the effort to build a billboard. It's not some flimsy structure. I mean, that's the real deal. That's going to stay, that's up to code. And that's going to be around forever, but there was nothing to show for it. But there was something meaningful about it. Somebody was trying to tell somebody something. yet at the same time empty. And then, so I kind of thought more about this and kind of delved back in. This was one of the first photos I took. This was back during the £5 a pop music photos. And this is over in Newcastle up in the Northeast. Like I say, it's a beautiful place, but in the 80s, post-industrial Thatcherism and whatnot, it was pretty run down. So anything that wasn't nailed down, people would just grab a hold of and just walk off with, even if it's what was supposed to be here, which was a life belt. So I just thought, again, a kind of play there between something that's significant, there's something there that is literally there to save lives, yet something that's utterly blank, and really all it talks about is Michelle and Tony and whoever else has kind of memorialized that place. I'll skip over the skip over to well, no, I'll go back to that. It's a favorite thing of mine that's, you know, everybody knows, but the idea here with photography being something that you look into, but the subject also looks right back at you. And so a sense that I've tried to explore in photographs of there being a sense of something going on, but you don't quite know what it is. There's some meeting, there's some togetherness here, there's some sense of community. This is actually at the West Hollywood Community Center. And I just thought it was interesting that whatever sense of community there is concealed here. Seeing that in a similar photograph, which is over in Sochi in Russia, the sense of you know, seats for players to prepare for games that, I mean, I never saw any take place. So again, another a kind of a sense of play there between emptiness and significance. Another book of mine, another favorite book of mine, where a character talks about being stared at by the television rather than staring at it. And I do find that this kind of sense of paranoia is something I've not necessarily tried to explore, but it's something I can't really avoid. So I've always been fascinated by situations that imply something going on, specifically some kind of communication that maybe some people are involved with. So I loved this taxi cab here in Tokyo, where there's no driver. I mean, have they parked because they've gone home? I mean, it's right on a zebra crossing there, so I don't think that's really, you know, highway code appropriate. But they've parked next to a telephone, but the telephone box is also empty. So, you know, it just feels like a little story of emptiness that seems somehow very significant to me. And then, I mean, furthering that idea of empty communication, I love the idea of two phone boxes standing next to each other. And it, you know, are they talking to each other? Is somebody calling in? Is this some kind of feedback loop going on? So this is just, as I say, a preoccupation, not that I've necessarily delved into, but just something I haven't been able to shake. I've also been quite interested in architectural photography, and another favorite quotation here from Althusser talking about interpolation. I grew up in Durham was a very Labour-dominated, overtly socialist part of the world, where Marxism was extremely popular. And there's this idea of interpolation where you can be looking at something, you can be experiencing something, but the state at the same time kind of fixes you in place, quite similar to how we in the old days would, fix a photograph. It's like you're grabbed and it's part of a historical moment that won't change. And so I've kind of felt this kind of, as I say, in communication, but also in how architecture achieves the same thing. This is the former presidential palace in Saigon, obviously pre-75. And I love the idea here of there being a presidential committee here, making decisions about the country and about the population. It is very stark, very empty, and there's an absent kind of center in there that also kind of reminds me of birth as well. So just seeing that as a place where decisions are made, but the place itself is empty. And that was about 2014. And then, as you can see, I'm kind of jumping back and forth between later photos and my very first ones. This, again, very early photograph. This is Swan House in Newcastle. Again, pretty run down. I think it was either governmental or some, creepy kind of company like Shell or something like that, where the brutalist architecture is definitely trying to tell us something, that we are bigger than you, we will be here forever, you humans are just passing through. And the slightly more kind of fun side of that, again, coming more to the present, this is in Singapore. Very similar building, very similar style, similar materials. But I love that, it's a pretty grey day in kind of downtown Singapore. But there's a sign where it says, "Escape to Phuket." And I'm like, well, it looks nice, but I don't think anybody's going. This was not a high income building. And then lastly, coming through, I think my final. So Roland Barthes, writing about photography in Camera Lucida, talks about two things: the punctum, which is the general kind of socio-political context of the photograph, and the studium and the punctum being the kind of detail that pokes through it to achieve meaning. And it's that dialogue that I'm starting to delve in a bit more. I've always seen in these photographs a sense of, being told either overtly through architecture or through absence, like the missing life belt, but seeing it more as a dialogue between the two now. Maybe it's the recent political changes, but feeling more of a sense of kind of resistance against that interpolation. This is, again, one of the first photos I ever took, and it's still one of my favorite ones from 30 years ago, where you have this big, municipal building in the background that's kind of very dominant, reaches way past, the sky, way into the sky, out of the frame. Seems to be telling us what to do. And in the foreground, there's a little kind of picket fence, literally made of sticks. And then in the middle, a very, I think it is also a public building. It's not a private residence, but I love how its message was certainly extremely unpopular in Newcastle in 1990. I can tell you that. And I loved how it's, written on a small little building that's kind of quite literally making a point. It's pointing up at the building, and it's establishing a dialogue there. And I think my final photograph is quite a similar one. Again, jumping back to the present. This is in Culver City in California. And I love how the city of palm trees here is kind of combating the somewhat brutalist concrete structure here. it's not quite succeeding. The building's, you know, chopping its head off, but at least it's establishing some kind of dialogue, if not resistance, then at least dialogue. So that's been, I think, my trajectory through photography. Starting out, I think, from a mildly, you know, a sense of discomfort through very overt paranoia about, you know, government and communication, and then now trying to see it more as a dialogue of kind of resistance against those pressures.
Wow, thank you so much, Tim. That was great, and I'm just so appreciative of the way that you're deftly kind of weaving in between this visual language that you're decoding, but also you're weaving into this theoretical language of kind of semiotics and meaning and literally signs and signifiers, which is just like so there. And I wonder, are you also you're clearly a thinker. Are you also a writer, or are you, you know, what else, how did you weave these together, this kind of, this language and rhetoric of image with what you do?
Not a writer, but I mean, I started out, my first interest in kind of creative arts was photography. I kind of dropped out of school and was kind of not really doing much of anything, getting into various kind of scrapes, quite literally wandering around places I shouldn't have been late at night. And a friend of my brother's said, hey, look, if you're going to wander around doing nothing, then take a camera, at least take a camera.
Okay.
So that's how I got into photography, and photography through to taking photographs of musicians. And that got me interested in music and photography, which got me interested in kind of film and TV. And then I ended up going to film school. And then from film school ended up designing live events, of which, you know, which are now photographed by other people. So I guess I've, and, you know, did a couple of cultural studies kind of degrees in the middle of it. So yes, not a writer, but definitely innovated by the relationship of photography to the greater cultural and socio-cultural context.
Well, that helps kind of that trajectory again, in the same way that Michael's was, you know, talking about his trajectory informing. And I'm actually a little curious about what, without all of this language surrounding the photos, and what is the, you know, what drives what you're doing? Like, is the image plus the ideas the important part, or is it just, you know, just the pure kind of setup of the shape and the line? Like, what comes first for you, the idea or the visual?
Definitely the idea. I mean, as I say, the kind of paranoid, if there is a paranoid school of photography, then you know,
It's you.
punch my card now. But like I say, it's not necessarily something I've sought out, but it's definitely, you know, a sensation that I think many of us feel, whether it's, you know, with a small p of, you know, conspiracy theories and things like that, in which I don't really partake. But just a sense, you know, in our, I mean, I'm studying architecture at the moment at UCLA, and there's a great sense of, you know, architecture's effect on us. You know, how the built environment around us, whether, like I say, it's you know, a stand for a lifebelt through to an enormous presidential palace. The sense of there being a system of communication operating just beyond our perception of it, I think, is something that touches a nerve in me and always has.
Yeah, and so, and then the interesting part of that communication with the architecture, like it all implies the human, but very little of, do you ever use the human as a subject, like the people, or do you just, is that too much staring back at you?
You know, I went through a you know, big, you know, bag full of photographs for this, and I did found a picture and I nearly included it, and then I thought, well, maybe not. It was a medical photograph, a medical museum, which had 6 death masks. They were, you know, casts of heads of, you know, medical, up in Edinburgh, I think it was, which has a very vibrant medical scene, you know, Burke and Hare and all those guys. So yeah, so I thought, hey, let's try and find some portraits in there. And the only portrait I could find was of 6 plaster heads of, you know, from the morgue, which I thought maybe wouldn't be too appropriate. So no, very, very few people.
Yeah, I think not saying you should, but I'm just saying it's a, you know, hopefully you have an Instagram account and can go check out the Cats of Brutalism, because it's one of my favorite accounts. It's brutalist architecture with gigantic cats photoshopped into them, which is just really fun. So that's just my suggestion for a lighthearted distraction next time you're looking.
I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Tim. And we've got one more person to talk to, and then we'll get back together and maybe have everyone see some lines that, you know, threads that through all the work. But we're going to move on to Julie O'Connor, who is joining us from Connecticut tonight. And you might recognize her work from the, if you've seen like the cover of our Facebook image for the invitation to the event. So yeah, I think we'll go ahead and join with Julie.
Hi, unaccustomed as I am to public speaking or Zoom talk, I hope this goes okay. This is the image that Joanna was just mentioning, called Fashion in the Year 2020. And like all our creative people and visual artists, photographers, professional or amateur alike, we've been searching to find images that represent what's happening to us in the year 2020. And this one has had a lot of renaissance, and you know, it was very deliberate. It's downtown. It's in a former British immigrant's shop. It's downtown Westport, Connecticut, which is a, you know, pretty affluent suburb of New York. This was in the summertime. Masks were not that popular. I mean, in other words, it was a divisive topic. Most people around here were wearing them. He was selling them for $20 a piece and giving $5 to charity from that. And I spent a lot of time as a photojournalist, and you know, everyone's talking about their decades here of work in photography, and you know, we've gone through black and white film, developing our own film in a wet dark room, making our own prints, working in color slide, then having Kodachrome disappear, working in Fuji color film, having Fuji, my favorite Fuji film, disappear, reluctantly moving into digital, and then bigger and bigger megapixels. And then it's most probable that the camera will disappear altogether, since everybody's camera is just in their phone now, and there's so much CGI. But it's what you bring to it. It's your life experience and your eye. And, you know, I find that a lot of things in my photograph that I didn't see when I first took it, but I spent a lot of time in Asia, Japan, China. And when I look at this, I can see that imprint on me of it. I mean, they're textile artists. The kimono makers are treated just like with respect of other visual artists, and mixing prints and patterns, you know, and having a different concept, you know, writing and style, and having no perspective in a way, trying to find your perspective. There is some order, but you have to delve in to find it. And there's a concept in Japan of something called deep space. And this photograph goes back for quite, the far building is at least half a mile, but then it goes back even further. And there's the natural element of water, which is so Asian in it too. And I find out a lot of these things afterwards. Like, I didn't know that Stephen Kempson, whose shop this is, was an immigrant to America. He came here 16-year-old with $150 and wanted to be a soccer star. But he had also this passion for men's style, which gave him a whole career. And you can, you know, I see the art they make kind of as a living art form that continues on. And I want people to be able to delve into it and find things in it. Like, if you look in the middle, there's camouflage. And I feel like we really have been at war with a pandemic this whole year. But there's also, you know, a joy to come, and you can see with the polka dots and the gingham, and you know, pandemic is global, and these fabrics are, this is a bespoke, you know, handmade British men tailor shop. Very small, but very high end. But these fabrics are from all over the world, and the immigrant shop it is, you know, brings so much. All immigrants bring so much to our country, and it just, you know, my early training as a photojournalist is here. My travels, my experience, and it's got to speak for itself, I find. But you know, when you're a photojournalist, you've got that caption, but this has to tell its own story, and I think it does. And I think that, you know, it's already been in several shows, and people really find something in it. So that the other thing is that I studied, you know, the classics of photographic history, like Walker Evans in particular comes up with this. I don't know if everyone's familiar with his photo Wash Day, which was taken on Washington Street in New York. But it's the laundry hung out to dry. I don't know if I have it. Yeah, I do. Okay. Nope. Okay. Try again. Oh dear.
We're seeing wash day, so.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So you can see the clotheslines and maybe the electrical lines and maybe the telephone lines, but the order of the clothes. And he took this photo, you know, in Cuba. He took it in, you know, downtown New York. And of course I studied him, and, you know, like a text, but I didn't see it until later. I didn't see that influence until later, you know, and I just happened to have bought his book, right? I took this in middle of August, and First and Last, I think is the name of it. Yeah, and I opened it up and I found it. I said, oh my God, I can't believe it. This is, you know, this is part of my training, but you don't you look for a vivid, compelling image that has something to say, but you're bringing everything of your life to it when you take it, you know? I don't know if I can do this one. I'll try. This is, I have a solo show, which I have not been able to see. It's been up in the hospital. Called the Yale Art Corridor. So only the doctors and the nurses and frontline workers. See, I spent months planning it and picking out images for it and figuring out how to hang it. And then when the time came, the quarantine procedures were so strict that I couldn't even go in the hospital. And this is just so you can see some of my work, that the images that are up there. In this one too, I think you can see some of the natural elements of mother of pearl and gold abstracted, and it's almost like a print on print. That one's from No Man's Land out in Martha's Vineyard. And this whole Sea in Disguise series is about not knowing your point of view, not knowing exactly where are you, what is this of? And you know, it's a scene I've seen a million times, but I was like in the water trying to capture this over and over and over and over again, and leaves were moving and shadows and clouds, and you know, this, you took a lot, but there was just one that was that really made it, you know. I think, well, let's continue to play out. This is a series I'll be working on for a long time. This reflections and not knowing where you are exactly, and water and elements and lyricism, but clarity at the same time. Virginia Woolf once said that on or around December 1910, human character changed. And she was talking about the speed of time and people's relationship to each other. And I just feel like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to works. This is an stop share. I think this year, I mean, we might be Zooming for the rest of our lives. I mean, our relationship to people, you know, we don't go to the doctor anymore. We have telemedicine. We don't work anymore. We telework. Our intimate lives are all completely changed. Everything about travel, we don't travel. Our family, the family you don't see. I just feel like this year has been the year of change for all of us, for people, but you know, in our country and around the world. And so I just was trying to find a little bit of that in this photo, but.
Well, you definitely did. I think when you're talking about what we've experienced collectively over the last year, I can say just from being in the galleries that your work is one that everyone is drawn to, and has this mixture of this kind of identification and the playfulness and the kind of the sheer horror, or like the horror of what has happened. All of that comes out when people talk about this image, which I think speaks to what you've been talking about. And from a sense of just thinking about your water series and about your travel as a photojournalist, and feeling like you know where you are, but you don't know where you are, which I think a lot of us can identify with, when, in the last year, like we know we're at home, but gosh, where are we?
It's all going to end. Exactly.
Yeah. So I wonder how being in one space and one place has affected your practice. And I think a lot of people have different experiences of this over the last year, but I'd love to just hear from you as someone who moved around a lot to as a photojournalist, staying in one place.
It's very hard. It's very hard, and it energizes me to be out and to see the new, like Michael was talking about that butcher in Italy, I've been traveling since I was a teenager, and it's kind of my lifeblood. So it's been very hard. And I last trip in February was to Paris, and while I was there, it was the first person who died of COVID we had debated whether we're going to go on this trip or not, and what we went, and it's so imprinted on my mind, and I live it, and thankfully I got some good images, like the Holy Grail, Holy Geometry was taken in the Louvre, that was on the slideshow at a time when all the people in the Louvre, all the workers were like, we don't want to come to work. There's millions of people coming into the Louvre. And, I waited, just like Jim was saying, till everybody had left to get that blankness, of the architecture. But, all the docents and all the people were just like crowding against walls, trying to stay away from people. But it's very hard to capture that sense of trepidation and uncertainty and fear that people, of this global pandemic.
Yeah, it's definitely changed so much. So in terms of what keeps you going out to take photographs, or have you continued to practice your work?
Well, I mean, I have, I had, an artist of the day with one of our local groups here, where I just went out we were going out every day just to get out of the house when it was good weather. And you'd see gloves on the ground and you're like, oh my God, is that a COVID glove? And so I did a collage of that, and, but then what you bring to it in the middle of a pandemic is, well, I don't know, will that hold up, or will that be too literal, Nick, when we're all got our vaccinations, So
Well, time will tell for sure. So we've got time now for any questions that came up for any of you, for each other, if you'd like, or if reflecting on each other's talks, if you'd like to add a little bit more to what you had to say earlier. Yeah, I'd like to invite anyone to speak if they have something they'd like to add.
Well, I was just going to say also that since the galleries started closing in March and they were all planned, I started creating something which I never would have done before, just a monthly reel of everything that you could have seen in person in a gallery. I made like a slideshow of it. So every month I something I never would have done before.
Yeah. So the creativity that comes out of this trial.
Or us just talking here. I mean, we're not in your beautiful center in Poughkeepsie.
And we're all home.
Yeah, so we're making it work.
Michael, I was going to ask you more about the locations of your photographs and how you found them and what drew them to you. And I mean, it's one thing to take a photograph of enormous, great big building in downtown, you know, Main Street, whatever, because you can see them from a distance. But how did you find those kind of little gems out in the snow and out in the woods?
Well, when the leaves fall off the trees, it's easier to find them in fall and winter. We found one that we haven't gone out to yet, out in Phoenicia, New York. We're doing a COVID getaway from the house. And my wife and I and a fellow that I work with, he's a writer, and we did this pedal car thing on an old rail line. And near the end of where we had to stop, there was one sitting in the woods about 30 yards to our right. So I said, did I see what I just saw? And Tess said, yes, I think that was a trailer. So on the way back, we saw it. But I just haven't. It's about 1.5 mile walk in from the nearest road. So it's going to be a lot of fun to get back to that one. But that's how we find them. And if you ever see one, you know, drop me an email. You know, the more decrepit, you know, and then you just see them, you know. And I saw what looked like the front end of one once sitting out in the woods, and I walked up to it, and the whole thing had collapsed into the earth. And that was a pretty interesting one.
Abandonment, the theme of abandonment is so big in the world. You know, if you go on Instagram, that hashtag just takes off. People have just a fascination with things just being walked away from and abandoned.
But everybody's done dead cars in the woods, you know, with the tree growing out of it or something. And then I found this little narrow spot to shoot in. But I love the shot of yours, Tim, of the emptiness of the desert and the empty billboard. I mean, that just kind of made me look at it. I said I wanted to grab a screen capture of it so I could see it later. But it's just like, because I felt the same way, I guess, that you felt when you saw it. There was the emptiness. There was nothing there.
Yeah.
And it sort of goes back into what I do with the trailers. There's no one there anymore. Just something of theirs was left behind. I don't have that, what do you call it? The gift of the gab, as my Irish wife would say.
Well, I'm glad you like it. Thank you. I mean, it was funny. I mean, talk about decay. I mean, this was kind of going in the opposite direction of this was this was actually the King Abdullah Sports City, a huge kind of out of frame is this enormous gold and marble sports center, which, put it this way, was quite at odds with the surroundings for many reasons. And it was still unfinished. Yeah. And so, yeah, they hadn't got around to billboards or anything yet. I was in a minibus with 16 other guys with no air conditioning on our way to site. I don't know, 30 something. And but I managed to snap that through the window as we wheeled past.
Yeah, but Tess was just outside my office when the first shot that you did. We thought it might have been like a rally for a certain individual. That was our first thought. And then when you said that it was when you were becoming a naturalized citizen, Tess was over here tapping me like this, going, because Tess became a citizen, I don't know how long ago now, 1990, say, I would think it would have been,
Wow.
And it was a really good experience to see the different faces of the world standing there wanting to be an American.
It's I agree with her. It's incredibly moving experience. I mean, there were thousands of people there. I was, being a bit detached, taking pictures and, you know, being that guy.
Yeah.
But thousands of people, many of them, yeah, in tears. I didn't get one. A lot of people got a little miniature American flag they're waving. I didn't get one. But yes, incredibly moving experience. And then we all walk in as foreigners and we all walk out as Americans.
Americans, yes.
But then we all walk out, and then the place is empty again until they use it for, you know.
Hopefully not a rally.
Hopefully not.
Well, this has been an unplanned kind of coincidence between the three of you talking about immigration and being naturalized, and Julie as well. And this has just been a pleasure of an hour to spend with three amazing photographers. And really, I wish we could all be together. But this is the silver lining of this pandemic, or, you know, one of these creative things that has happened for people like Barrett Art Centers. Now we can have people from all of the across the country and the world who are in our shows can actually talk to people who are other people in the shows who are from New York. And now this will be online so other people can find it, which is really great. Then thank you so much for your being with us tonight and speaking about your work. And I hope that you can find this probably on our YouTube channel in a day or so. And next Thursday night, we have three other artists who are in the show who will be speaking again. And I would love for you to drop in and shoot some questions to them and stump them if you can. And hopefully we will see you all again in person at some point in the future. But until then, thank you all. And thank you all for watching tonight. And we hope to see you again soon. Photowork will be up in Barrett in Poughkeepsie until February 20th. And we'll get some install shots of the exhibition up online soon too. So thank you all.